right, we'll call the City Council workshop to order for Thursday, August the 27th. And Ms. Huerta, if you'll call the roll.
Mayor Joe McComb.
Here.
Council members Roland Barrera. Mr. Barrera? Okay, he said he would be joining us a little bit late, so he might not be here yet. Rudy Garza. Paulette Guajardo.
Present.
Gil Hernandez.
Here.
Michael Hunter.
Here.
Ben Molina.
Present.
Everett Roy. Mr. Roy will be joining us virtually. I don't know if he's not on yet, but he's joining us virtually today. Greg Smith. Here. City Manager Peter Zanoni.
Present.
City Attorney Miles Risley. Here. Mayor and Council, a quorum of the Council and their charter officers are present to conduct the meeting.
All right, well, the purpose of our workshop today is to have a budget overview of the airport operations, American Bank Center, and Convention and Visitors Bureau, and get a report on the hotel occupancy tax and what impact the hotel motel tax may have on our budget. So, Mr. Zanoni?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. And Mayor and Councils, that agenda that the Mayor just outlined is what we're going to do this afternoon. This will be our fourth and final budget work session. We've gone through all the major operating departments in the city. And over the past couple of weeks, the Council has also engaged the community in 5 community budget meetings through a virtual meeting. And we had over 1,000 participants, a lot of good comments and suggestions, and a lot of council participation as well. So those were very successful. And I think the work sessions have been very helpful to the council as well. At the end of the 4 presentations today, we'll have Eddie, our budget director, kind of wrap up with a list of some of the potential amendments that the council will begin to consider beginning on September 8th with the first reading of the budget. So that'll be something on our agenda as well this afternoon. So with that, we're going to have airport begin. We have our 2 newest assistant directors. I know we haven't seen them much because of COVID, but Kevin's going to do the presentation, and joining him is Tyler. And they're doing a great job at the airport, making a lot of good changes, establishing relationships, and all that despite the impact to air service, as we know, because of the pandemic. So we're going to turn it over to Kevin. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Peter. Good afternoon, Mayor, members of the board, members of the City Council, pardon me. Old habits die hard, and city leaders. So we'll start with the aviation presentation here. If we go to the next slide, you'll see our mission statement. This has been, sorry, these are our board members. I apologize. I'm missing that slide. We've asked that Jay Wise call in on WebEx. I don't know if he's on. Okay. But we wanted to introduce you to the chairman of our board, Mr. Jay Wise.
Kevin, I'm here, sir.
Okay, super. Could we go back to the slide with the board members? Perfect, thank you. So, Mr. Wise, we just wanted to introduce you real quick and see if you had any comments for City Council before we present.
Well, just quickly, I know everybody's time is valuable. Yes, I agree with the council that the hiring of Kevin Smith as the Assistant Director of Admin and Tyler Miller, the Assistant Director of Operations, were tremendous additions. So thank you for your due diligence towards that, your search, and the successful conclusion with these tremendous additions to the team. COVID, as you well know, has changed everything. The board and all staff members at the airport continue to work aggressively to make sure of the safety of all those utilizing the airport. The runways are in tremendous condition. We're getting ready to ship into the facility itself, and that'll be a project into next year. From the school, the trend is your friend. Difficult times for all, but the Corpus Christi Airport is exceeding the national averages fairly significantly in terms of those traveling now and, as importantly, future bookings. So the efforts of the staff continues to pay off very, very handsomely. The board has total confidence in them, and I believe that, not to speak for you all, hopefully carries through to the City Council at the same time. Here to answer any questions that you all may have. My time also is somewhat limited. I'll stay as long as I possibly can. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. And if there's any questions for me, I'll be happy to try to entertain those.
Thank you, Chairman Wise. If we can go to the next slide, we've got our mission statement. This mission statement's been in place for a little while. We're going to be taking a look at this real hard and make sure we're tying into the city's mission statement. So there'll probably be some changes coming up next year to that, but right now that's where we are. The next slide, a little bit about our department. Right now we have three commercial airlines. We have 7 branded rental car companies. And prior to COVID-19, the total impact of the Corpus Christi International Airport, you can see there, we're directly responsible for about 8,693 jobs, $286 million in payroll, and an output of about $782 million. That's according to the Texas Department of Transportation. Next slide. Some of you know we had an air service task force that we started up sometime last year before Tyler and I got here. And we had to place it on hold due to COVID. A lot of these air carriers employees don't even know if they're going to have a job, much less what routes they're going to be flying next year. So we've put it on hold. We do have a final draft of our strategic plan, and we're already implementing the first stage of that. And some of that first stage is making customers feel welcome coming back to the airport and safe. So we've implemented a lot of safety guidelines at the airport to help with that. We're still doing ongoing research. Other airports, what are they doing right now? What are the airlines doing right now? And what are cities doing right now? We do plan to relaunch the program in January with a select group of the team that are ready to get back into the game. A lot of the business leaders and community leaders are, they're struggling as well getting their businesses back up and running. So we don't want to overwhelm them. Next slide. So this is our current organization chart. I just kind of wanted to show you how it's laid out. I'm sure there's going to be changes made to this fairly soon. We're still hiring some new people. We've got actually 3 new managers we're going to be hiring this month, so we're really excited about that, bringing in some good talent. Next slide. For our 2020 achievements, just a few here that we documented was we completed a terminal assessment, and that was a pretty lengthy exercise going through every aspect of the airport property. And the terminal was the main focus, and we looked at everything you can think of, and it's a very comprehensive document. Terminal and tarmac construction, that's ongoing. Tyler's going to talk about it a little bit if you have any questions on that. And we've led the way on cleanliness. We started using a system. You see the picture there of the Clorox Total 360 machine. And it basically kills any germs, bacteria, including COVID, on contact and for 30 days. So it's a great tool to use in the terminal. We can knock out about 9,000 square feet in 20 minutes. So it's a great product for us. We've also put in tons of hand sanitizers. 11,000 masks were donated by the FAA. And then we put in some Pure Air 3000 air purifiers that help clean the air in the terminal. And then we're really proud of our grant funding, and we'll get into that a little bit on the next slide. So our performance measures, you can see our employments. Our estimate this year is going to be down quite a bit from where we were in the actual 2019 numbers. We think we're on the right growth trend, so we feel like we'll get back up to the 2003 number by the end of next year. You can see our revenues are down quite a bit. Almost $2 million. And we're going to work really hard to contain that and continue to build back up our revenues. Parking is down again due to COVID, and we feel like we're going to stabilize that this year. It is coming back. The good news, it's all trending in the right direction. And then the last line there, our Faa Grant Funding. We had $7.5 million in 19, and we're going to have $15,367,000 this year, and then the following year we'll have 2.6. We're hoping that'll grow as well, but right now that's where it stands. And then just to cover our services a little bit, I'm sure you're all familiar with what all we do out there. Next slide. Our operations and Department of Public Safety make up 42 of our full-time employees. Facility management, 19. planning and development 13, and then our contract and lease management team's about 7 folks. And we oversee the 2,000 acres of property out there, and it's quite expansive when you start thinking about all the businesses that do have services out there. Next slide. These are our expenses for next year. As you can see, we've tried to maintain a flat budget overall. We are tracking right at a 10.3 in operating, and our budget's 10.5. So for next year, so it's up about $200,000, and most of that is just from some of the city costs that were added at the end. We were flat before that happened, so we're looking into those to make sure that we can find another way to save it. So we're planning on coming in flat at 10.3. That's our goal. You can see our Pfc and Cfc funds. Those are the passenger facility charge and concessions facility charge. So customer facility charge, excuse me, for the rental cars. We did decrease by 1 position year over year. And then next slide, you can see the kind of where our revenue comes in from as it pertains to the expense. So those are where we get all of our revenues from. We're hoping that continues. So some of our enhancements for next year, we're going to a keyless airport campus. We're going to get rid of all of our keys so that everybody have to have an access control badge in order to enter any building that leads on to the secured side of the terminal. This is mainly the east and west hangars, if you're familiar with how the airport's laid out. But all of those will become keyless at the end of before the end of 2021. The other big enhancement we're going to get done this year is we're going to get 2 of the 3 TSA screening equipment devices out of the customer lobby. We're working with TSA and the airlines, and we're going to get those put in a room that's not being used yet, and we're splitting the cost between the 3 of us. So we're looking forward to doing that and cleaning our lobby up a little bit. It'll still leave 1, but we have a tentative plan in place on how we're going to handle that one later. And with that, I'm going to have Tyler come up and cover our capital budget projects real quick, and then we'll be here to answer any questions you have.
Afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I believe the next slide talks about the TSA baggage screening relocation that Kevin just mentioned. And then I'll talk about the next slide after that, our proposed capital budget projects. Airport has a very robust capital improvement program. It's mostly driven by FAA grants. In fiscal year 2020, the FAA is actually covering 100% of the federally funded projects. Typically, they only cover 90%, and we're responsible for the other 10%. That's why we have a $15 million capital program in 2020. We're taking advantage of that 100% federal funding. So next year in FY21, we will be responsible for 10% of the local share for a fire station apron reconstruction. It's also going to be an expansion at the same time to accommodate a brand new firefighting truck that we're getting as part of our FY20 100% funded package. The FAA will also fund 90% of our terminal building assessment plans and specs. That's the next stage in the terminal assessment that Kevin mentioned earlier, where we looked at every aspect of our terminal, its operations and its maintenance, and we're breathing new life into the terminal that's coming on 20 years old. Finally, the FAA will fund 90% of our airfield pavement and markings replacement. A lot of those markings have reached its useful life, and the FAA has kind of tabbed that as an action item for us in some of their annual inspections. So we're going to maintain our proactivity and replace some of those markings and give them a new useful life. As part of the FAA CARES Act in FY20, we were allocated about $6.5 million. $4.5 million of that is going toward passenger boarding bridge replacements. Our boarding bridges are also 20 years old. They've definitely reached their useful life. Thanks to our technicians, we're doing a lot of PM on those and preventative maintenance to keep them in service. And we're going to look at replacing a number of those bridges. We've got 3 airlines that use 3 bridges every day, and we've got 2 bridges to kind of accommodate some of our surge capacity. So we're going to be looking at our options of replacing 3 bridges, 4 bridges, and even all 5 bridges in FY21. Finally, we're also looking at some automobile replacements with operating funds of $50,000. Looks like right now we're planning on replacing some maintenance pickup trucks and hopefully some zero-turn lawn mowing equipment. So that's just a glimpse in some of the highlights of our capital program. Again, a number of different funding sources for that, and we look forward to maintaining a healthy relationship with the FAA. Like Kevin said, in FY22, we're looking at $2.6 million today. That's the guaranteed federal funding that we have, and we're hoping to work with our representatives in the federal government to increase that with some discretionary funding and increase some of that for the future years too. I believe the next slide concludes the presentation, so I'll turn it back over to Kevin to answer any questions, and I'll stay close by as well. Yeah.
Are there any questions I can answer?
Ms. Guajardo?
Good. Thank you.
Oh, well, that light's, your name's on the light, so did you have a question? Oh. Okay, Greg Smith, excuse me. All right.
Thank you all. On the radio, I heard some advertisements promoting the airport. Is this in the budget? Are we going to continue to do that?
Yes, sir.
And how much is our bleed right now? How much are we losing there?
So right now, we're at about 65% below where we were this time last year. The other airports are trending about 70 to 73%.
So we're doing double what they're doing then.
Yeah, we're holding our own. I mean, we're definitely trending up faster than any other airport in Texas that I could find.
Well, you have your employments, so our fiscal year starting October 1st, still at 205,000, about 60% of normal on there. I know it's pretty foggy with COVID, but how do we have a chance of substantially beating that if things come to normal? Or where are they on that?
The airlines are still making decisions,
Yeah.
I mean, weekly. They're making changes to their schedule still. So I feel like we probably won't know anything until October 1, kind of a settling ground when the airline, some of that funding expires. You know, there were 15 airports that lost service. Was it United? American. Pulled back 15 cities, and you know, they were smaller cities, but we're running 70-80% load factors with American right now, so we're very happy that they.
So they're putting them in the middle seat, or we're using the small jets, I guess. There's no middle seat.
Yeah, they're 2x2s, thank goodness. But no, we're doing really well. We're trending in the right direction, and the future loads, like our chairman said, Mr. Wise, that we're recovering faster than any other airport is, and I think it has a lot to do with the city and the beaches and what all this area has to offer. I think our prices have come down a little bit, and I also think there's a lot of people can't make connections like they used to. So if you're flying internationally and you want to fly from Corpus to, let's say, London, you may have to wait 9 hours in Houston. So that's hurting us a little bit. But once some of those schedules start coming back in the bigger cities, I think we'll make better connections and get more traffic even.
Okay, and in your slide, in a normal year, we're $700 and something million in economic.
Yeah, so that TxDOT study, it came out in 2018, and it has us listed at the total impact the airport contributes to the region is 8,693 jobs and $286 million in payroll.
So if we can increase service, then it is just a huge economic impact for us.
It is, and we're doing some research right now on what one customer brings to the city of Corpus, right? So if we can get a whole plane full of new customers coming to Corpus, what does that bring to the region? And we're trying to quantify that so that we can bring you guys some good stories.
And are you burning any incense, voodoo dolls? You guys came in and brought the virus with you, and I think you paid a little of the price too, right?
We did. I'm teaching him Texan. Does that count? Yeah. No, we're doing everything we can, and believe me, our motto right now is we're going to make that airport 1% better every day.
Okay. Well, yeah, 1% is pretty thin, but if it's every day, I like that. Compounded.
But once we get everybody back to
Jay,
work.
could I add a couple numbers?
Say that again, Ms. Rice?
Would you mind if I added a couple numbers for Councilman Smith and the City Council?
Absolutely.
What we were looking at on emplanements in the April timeframe, when the wheels really started to come off, we had emplanements at CCIA of approximately 1,000, maybe 1,500. May jumped up north of 5,000. June, we were closing in on about roughly 9,000, and then in July, we're at 11,000. Now, on forward bookings, the national average, and this is through the third week of August, the national average on forward bookings was down 69%. Our airport was down about 42%. And, nothing to write home to mom about, obviously, but as I mentioned in the opening, the trend is tending to be our friend. We also found that, Southwest Airlines had come in and they were quite optimistic originally to go back to the same number of flights at the end of this year as they were going to have from the beginning. And they have pulled in their coattails very, very quickly on that. And are actually, Southwest announced just a couple of days ago that they had cut service to 15 cities. American announced they were cutting service to 30 cities. And I think it's commendable to staff, both past and present, that Corpus Christi still maintains 3 of the 4 major carriers in this nation. So, I know we want more. I know we want better. That's the American way. And let's drive on with that concept. And this staff is doing that, as is the board. But I would just ask that we also keep in mind that the city of size of Corpus Christi, where many have already faltered, and we may yet, but, once again, we're fighting tooth and nail every day, as Kevin had alluded to. 3 of the 4 major carriers of this nation fly in and out of this airport.
Thank you, sir.
Kevin, Tyler, thanks for all your hard work. You're doing a great job.
Glad to be here. Thank you all very much.
Mr. Nundy?
Thank you, Mayor. Quick question. Some of the questions I had around the airport were centered around your fueling contractor for, and as I understand, you went from 2 to 1. Can you kind of give some explanation as to that, as to?
Sure. So right before we arrived, Signature Aviation was one of our fixed base operators in FBO, and they pulled out of Corpus Christi due to other reasons in their organization. It had nothing to do with us. And so the other FBO on the field is a company called Atlantic Aviation. And so when Signature left, they left a couple of, I'm going to say, holes unfilled. They didn't really perform what they were supposed to perform. And I think that's one of the reasons they left, because we started putting pressure on them to perform that work. And so when they left, we did a management agreement with Atlantic to continue to kind of at least operate and maintain those other hangars that Signature left. And we were going to put out a RFP for that FBO. But after talking to a lot of the fixed base operators in the nation, they're not bidding on anything. So we decided to let the management agreement continue for now until things pick back up. But we're looking at how we can redo that space and get out of that management agreement as we speak. I mean, hopefully we're going to be able to do that pretty soon. The 2 main operators over there are Sterling Aviation and Al Dodds Aviation. And we've been in conversation with them about some possible ideas and solutions to kind of remedy the situation that Signature left us in.
Okay. So your goal is to have more than one at some point down the future. I mean, generally when you have one, there's less competition.
Exactly.
Fuel prices go up, things get a little higher.
Exactly.
And it makes our airport less attractive for those companies. So I would recommend that you try and get through that as quickly as possible.
Yes, sir.
And I understand they're responsible for the hangars that they, the upkeep of the hangars, and there's a certain cost to getting that contract.
Correct. And they were supposed to put some capital dollars into the infrastructure of those hangars, and they did not do that.
Okay. By the way, which one's the Red Raider? Guns up.
All right.
Thanks.
Hopefully we'll see some football this year. All right. Thank you.
Just a couple of questions, and they're more related to as I was watching up till 2 or so in the morning last night, the Hurricane Laura going in, and what impact is that having on us in terms of our airport making connections into the Houston area, or what did they shut down? At one point, I think I saw or read they eliminated 500 flights or something.
Yeah, they did a pre-cancellation package, and that usually means they get a hold of the customers before they show up at the airport. So we had very few customer impacts. I do want Tyler to share with you, though, what we're doing with some of our partners in the Gulf, though. I think this is important.
Yeah, very briefly, minimum impact to our customers. They were communicated to proactively, so we didn't have anybody stranded in the terminal due to the storm. We did cancel all of our Houston flights until about, I believe, 3 o'clock today, where they can start going back into Houston. We had a lot of general aviation diversions. At one point yesterday, we had about 12 helicopters on our FBO ramp that were all flying in from out east over here to kind of weather the storm. We're also in talks with a couple of companies who use helicopters to transport personnel to and from oil platforms that are normally based over in the Galveston area. And we've got agreements with them where they can relocate here if Galveston is compromised in their safety or their security of the airport. And right now we're working with them to kind of forge a more long-term relationship with them so that we can kind of expand that opportunity to have a long-term partner with them. They do about 400 oil platform workers every 2 weeks as they rotate those folks in and out. We can really boost some activity levels outside of the terminal, but still on the airfield. So LoRa is actually impacting a lot of our partners out east, but on our airfield yesterday, it was largely business as normal.
Good. Thank you. And then from a traffic standpoint, it sounds good, but our concessionaires out there at the airport, they're contracted for space, or that's not operated by the airport. They're just we've contracted space out to ABC Food Company or whatever we do. I was out the other day to pick up my daughter and granddaughters, and of course all the refrigerators were empty and it didn't look like much going on. I mean, what impact has that had, and are they even open when you're open, or when will they be back to where people can come in and they will at least have some food service or
Sure.
coffees and soft drinks or something?
Well, the short answer is they are open. I'll defer to Kevin, being the finance and admin director, and he'll explain the kind of changes that we've seen in some of those concessionaires. Yes, sir.
And we'll just do a quick
I
rotation.
think
So-
it's been rough on them. I mean, you just
Yeah,
can't.
it really has. We have lost one concessionaire, Hudson. They ran the gift shop, and they basically closed completely in April and May. They opened back up in June, and they made a substantial profit in June. They have what they call a minimum annual guarantee, a MAG. So they have to pay us a certain amount of money, and we put MAGs in these contracts in case something happens, right? So they wanted us to cancel that MAG, and we decided not to. They decided to close the doors, and you'll be seeing an ordinance coming through to allow the restaurant, who has been very successful. They do gift shop work in other airports, about 12 other airports. It's a company called Tailwind, and they're going to be taking over the gift shop. And we're trying to make that as quick as possible, but it does take time to get all the paperwork done. But we're working with legal and getting all the forms filled out and getting everything done. So we'll be bringing you a modification to Tailwind's lease probably hopefully the next 30 days. We've already got it in the pipeline.
I imagine it's been tough on those people out there.
It has, but they're still making some money. I mean, believe it or not, the MAG at Corpus at least is small enough that they can still survive if something happens. I think closing for 2 months completely really hurt that gift shop. So we tried to get them to open, but they didn't. They said they couldn't staff it.
All right.
But the restaurant is open, and the little coffee shop, and they sell some of the gift shop items, the stuff you really need. So I think it's going as well as it can right now.
All right, thank you. Anybody else have any questions? Anybody out in the cloud or the hinterland? All right. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mayor McComb and council members near and far. Matt Blasey here with the American Bank Center, here to discuss the FY21 proposed budget, as well as discuss the current year and then answer any questions that you may have. Starting with the first slide. Our mission statement is, as industry leaders in venue management serving the Coastal Bend community, we are committed to always doing more and providing extraordinary experiences for our clients, guests, and employees. And when we say to do more, that's carried out through our practicing 5 points of pride, which are more engagement, energy, kindness, service, and celebration. And so over the last couple of years, we've come up with more employee initiatives to enhance that in culture and giving back to our patrons and clients alike through these initiatives, as well as community with a community service initiative as well. About the American Bank Center, next slide. What we've typically done here on this page is provided a summary of the current year's event days and attendance, as well as some other information. Given the significant impact that COVID-19 has had on the American Bank Center, I thought it'd be better to provide a little more history as far as what the normal scenario would be. And so we typically average right around 400 event days. Attendance right around 500,000 people walk through the doors of American Bank Center annually. And then one thing that we've initiated, or through our new management agreement, through our benchmarks, is customer surveys. And we have various surveys, whether it's a convention with the clients, or on if it's a concert or a ticketed event, through our Ticketmaster system, we do surveys there. And very pleased to announce that our average score out of 10 over the last 3 years is an 8.7, which, and actually on the convention center side, as it relates to our food and beverage, catering, coordinators, all the experience, that's actually over a 9. The arena brings it down a little bit because some of the questions say, how do you rate our concession prices? And nobody really says, hey, we love paying those prices. We're going to give you a 10 on that. So 8.7 overall is something that we're very pleased. It's actually our benchmark number each year. And so next slide, please. So kind of from the last slide where we talked about the impact of COVID, this is putting it all on one sheet here as far as the impact. What we are forecasting for the year, with a month to go, is lost event income due to canceled events or postponed events that went into future fiscal years. So on the arena side, when you combine the two budgets, it's $1.5 million in revenues that we have lost. I'm not going to go over all the events that we've lost due to COVID-19 or postponed, but the big ones being the Buck Days Rodeo, including the Carnival, Texas Skills from a convention side of it, and several major concerts, all our high school commencements. And then also we're seeing all of our major events postponing into next fiscal year. And using Luke Combs, for example, that was supposed to be in April of 20, it got postponed to October of 20, so just 6 months later, and they just announced maybe a month, 3 weeks ago, that they're going to postpone it to the following October. So we're talking an 18-month delay on shows, and that's pretty much what we're looking at in the next, as far as looking to 21. We're really not anticipating large gathering events or doing them at a significantly reduced capacity until the second half of 21. And then on Monday, the Ice Rays announced they're suspending operation for the upcoming season, as well as we're going to see a reduced schedule from Texas A&M Corpus Christi basketball. That being said, we are not just sitting back on kind of our normal business operation. We're exploring daily new ideas to develop event content with the understanding that safety and health is a priority, but trying to create some more event activity for the community to come out in a safe manner. Next slide, please. Here's an overview of our org chart, our director and above staff. I brought with me Lisa Manda. She's was recently promoted to, about this time last year, I guess, going quick, to assistant general manager. She was hired about the same time I was as director of finance, and now is our assistant general manager. In addition, we've got 5 director roles, of which our director of sales and marketing and director of operations are vacant. Both those just at the time, right when all this was going down, became vacant, and we've put a hiring freeze for those roles up till now. We are actively seeking the director of operations position to hire that in the next month, given the large amount of building upgrades that we're doing, and including or highlighted by our significant capital improvement projects. So we're hoping in the next month we'll have that position hired as well. But we're definitely have some stability now. Myself and Lisa are coming up on our third 3-year anniversary, which is crazy. But everybody else has been there for 6, 8, 10 years. So that stability with some new, fresh blood in there has been a nice balance. Achievements for the year. From a community standpoint, we're, next slide, I'm sorry. from a community standpoint, we are ecstatic about the success of our Coastal Christmas event. It was our second year doing it. We expanded the days, we expanded the size of the rink, and we were and we added sessions, added a lot of enhancements to it, visual and across, and invested a lot into that experience. And it was just a tremendous success again. And 95% of all of our skating sessions were sold out, and we exceeded 25,000 people over the 10-day event. So have a lot of great ideas for the next year. Just kind of how far we go with it will be dependent on all the safety and capacity limitations that we may have. But as far as an achievement, very pleased on that event getting off the ground and the tremendous amount of positive feedback we've received on that. I broke out our capital improvements into two separate achievements because we've really been focused on that over the last couple of years, and we're breaking those out into three different categories and how we're strategic with it. One is ways to increase our revenues, one is to reduce our expenses, and a third is just overall facility relevance with a focus on enhancing client and patron experience. So we are doing, although we're dark right now as far as not having events, we are getting things done around the building. And while some of these are not fully completed, they will be by the end of the fiscal year, if not early into October, November timeframe. So just to highlight a couple things, from a reducing expenses, we renovated our lighting in the Water Garden Ballroom to LED. As the airport mentioned, we are also going to a keyless entry for all our essential doors. So there's some expense savings there, but also from a safety standpoint, that's a big one. And then ways to improve the client experience. We are installing a brand new video board in the arena right now. It's moving to a center hung board, and it looks pretty good. We're getting the displays going up today. And we'll be removing the end wall, which is going to allow us to push our stage back, which is a major game changer for us. We'll be able to sell 1,000 more tickets for our shows, which can get us in on some shows that we might not be getting because of capacity limitations. Just and to freshen up, we're going to repaint the arena concourse, give that a little better color scheme, a little softer colors there. Added a new air wall to our Henry Garrett Ballroom that had not been working, causing some issues with some of the events, multiple events going on. And then from a safety standpoint, we're implementing or installing all new hands-free faucets into all of the bathrooms around the American Bank Center. And then from an event standpoint, a big focus when I got here was to drive more large-scale major concerts to the arena, because from a financial standpoint, that's what makes our operating budget go. And so we had been seeing tremendous progress over the last couple of years, and to sum it up, we had more in just the 6 months of operation, and we shut down in March, and everything else has been pushed out. We had more arena concert / larger events in those first 6 months than each of the last 3 years, each individual year of the last, I think, 4 years. So we were definitely trending in the right direction and having a lot of great feedback and really building a nice deal. And then COVID hit. I don't know if you heard. So, but overall, very, very, like I said, we're taking advantage of this downtime right now to make a lot of necessary improvements around the facility. Some performance indicators on the next slide. Here, this is showing what our actuals were from FY19, what we're estimating for the upcoming year. I'm sorry, for this current fiscal year, and then what we're targeting for FY21. Capital projects, we have, in the last time back to my last slide, I put a lot of, once ASM Global took over the all elements of capital project oversight, we've really put a lot of time and effort back into making continued improvements to the facility, and take a lot of pride in finishing our projects on time and everything coming in under budget. So we've been maintaining, this next year will be less than the prior 2 years, but still a pretty good level of a capital improvement. Utility costs are, we are seeing a significant savings from the prior year due to us unfortunately not having the events. But from a savings standpoint, we're seeing it on the utilities. And then on the event days, we're tracking right now to have a better year than this year as relates to events. but they're going to be smaller scale, so financially not as impactful. And this is with the assumption that the event load will start picking up again in 2021. But if the trend continues of canceling events like they for the most part have through 20, we're going to see that number probably more like the FY20 estimate. And then I've already mentioned a couple times, but due to COVID and the pushing back of larger scale concerts, again, with the financial impact, we're showing that we're only anticipating 2 the next year, of kind of showing where we were the last 2 years. That's kind of upsetting, but we will make the best of it. From a proposed budget standpoint for FY21, before talking about the pie chart, one thing I want to focus on initially is our full-time positions. In March, prior to everything shutting down, we were at 44 full-time positions. Since then, we've had to do, due to lack of events and more importantly, lack of revenues, we've had to do 3 phases of staff reductions. And so that includes 12 positions that have been laid off. And so right now we have 30 full-time employees, of which out of those 30, 11 are on 100% furlough. And then the remaining 19 are on a partial furlough. So our staff right now, because we don't have events other than, we're getting stuff around the building, but for the most part, our staff is working on 50% furlough or being 100% furlough, or a big chunk of our staff has been laid off, with the intention of once we start having events again to build that back. But we are definitely taking into consideration the tax dollars, supporting the venue, and trying to be as fiscally responsible, with the understanding that we have to start up again at some point and want to have a semblance of a quality crew or staff. As far as the budget, the inside, the pie chart represents all the expenditures, and then the outer circle represents I'm sorry, yeah, next slide. The funding to cover those expenditures. And just one thing, about a third of the overall budget is tied into arena capital. When COVID hit, ASM Global submitted a revised capital list that cut it by about roughly $2 million. But once we had review with the Type A board, and we had a couple months to us, and the reason we cut it was due to anticipated lack of funds coming in on both on the hot and the Type A, or the sales tax, we reduced it. And then after talking with the Type A, they had assessed the taxes that were coming in for a couple months. It wasn't as impactful as we initially forecasted, so it was discussed and agreed upon because the building is not going to be very active, let's go ahead and make these improvements that we were initially going to do. So it went back to the just over $5 million in arena capital. We did not, on the hot fund side, because of not having as much dollars available, we did reduce that. We didn't look to put anything back in there. So we cut that capital project, those dollars, I think, about in half there as well. So we're only doing a few projects on the convention center side, just because lack of funds on the hot tax side of it. I think I covered everything. Next slide, please. We are just a couple of the highlights on the capital projects. We are moving forward with the renovations of our locker rooms and dressing rooms on the arena side. Worked very closely with our tenants, as well as touring artists or touring management groups to get all the feedback we could. And pleased to announce that we're at the drawings are at Development Services as we speak, and we're hoping to break ground on that project in November. And given the operating elements, we have to do it in 2 phases, so we can still have access to some rooms while events are happening. So we're looking at a 2-phase deal, to where the goal is to have the entire thing completed by the end of calendar year 21. So by the end of December of 21, we're hoping we expect that project to be done. So very excited to get caught up with some state-of-the-art opportunities for our tenants and shows. Next slide, please. We're also looking to continue to go digital with our signage. Lots of flexibility there, opportunity for increased revenues through sponsorship, as well as event experience with up-to-the-minute updates on the event. that we can provide. One thing we're doing on the convention center wall above the parking garage is a large digital video screen there, so we'll be able to not only promote upcoming events, but wayfinding. And if you've never been to the American Bank Center, it's a bit challenging to know where the Saline Auditorium is, the convention center. So we'll have wayfinding. Your event is Saline Auditorium with an arrow, excuse me, as well as what our policies are for that event. Bag policies, that people can see it before they come to the building. But we'll also have the ability to show movies on that, and so we have some potential opportunity there from an event standpoint. And then in the concourse, changing out all our stagnant signage to digital, again, to allow more opportunity for sponsorship and just kind of keep the building relevant and updated and fresh looking. So that's a project we're working on from video upgrades. And then next slide, please. And then the other big project that we're working on for FY21 is the suite level. The City Terrace, the outdoor area, is a beautiful site as from the view, but it's very underutilized. And so what we're looking to do is extend that hallway, if you're familiar with that, the suite level, extending that glass out to, it'd be a glass enclosure, so that we're basically doubling the size of that space, and then adding a premium bar there for our suite holders and our premium seat folks. From a facility side, what it's also going to do is reduce expense, because we have a lot of issues with the humidity coming in and tile and just a lot of repair and maintenance. So enclosing that's going to reduce our operating expense too. But tremendous opportunity, probably the biggest thing from a growth standpoint, from a revenue standpoint, is sponsorships and suites, and enhancing that experience is going to, it's a great time to do this, so we can, while the building is not as active, we can have this ready to go and build it from a sponsorship and suites, and we're also going to update the club lounge, that corner bar area as well. So some very nice additions. Again, with the funding more on the arena Type A side, that's where the focus of this is. We, from a convention center, like I said, we reduced the amount. So what our focus is for this year is we're going to update the carpet. Yeah, not very excited to put pictures of carpet up. That's why I didn't put it up. But basically, a 2-year plan to update all the carpet in the public areas. So we're not, for the budget that we have this year, we're not going to be able to do all the ballrooms, all the hallways, but we're going to, over a 2-year time, update all that. So that's the big project on the convention center side. So keeping very busy from a building operation and capital, and just wish we could get back to doing some events. That's what we're there for. It's what we live for, and that's been frustrating, but everybody's having to deal with it and adapt. So anyway, that's the end of my presentation. If we'll open up to any questions at this time.
Ms. Warlow,
Here.
did you have,
It's me, Joe.
oh, that's your, okay, I'm sorry. Greg's got your button on down here. I'm sorry, it shows
you,
up on my
Greg.
list here. And then, okay, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Matt. Couple of questions on there with the ice raise. What kind of effect is this going to have? And then the second is, what do you see conventions going forward? Are we going to see some structural changes because of the virus? It looked like most of your events are just pushing, and events are looking good. How about conventions and conferences with it?
Well, Brett's speaking next. He can probably answer a little more educated than I can. From a venue perspective, we're just seeing, we kind of lump everything into our large gatherings. And where large gatherings were the first thing to shut down, it's also going to be the last thing to come back. Yeah. And so, we have our regulations through the state and the city as far as what we can do. Currently, it's at 50%. It's something that is just going to, if the events can happen at the existing guidelines, then we'll find a way to do it. What I think, and like I said, Brett can probably speak more on it, is we may see some opportunities because being a smaller, some events or conferences, conventions that may go to a major city, maybe looking elsewhere to find something that's a smaller city, and so there may be some opportunities as well. But for the first 6 to 8 months, I think, of next year, it's going to be really the first part of 20, I think, can be a struggle, but as we get into 21, we may see, it just depends on the numbers. I don't know if you want to speak to that.
Tag in.
Okay.
Yeah. You know, one of the big trends that we're seeing is obviously.
Mr.
up a
Oding,
little
can you
closer.
speak with the mic?
Sorry.
Yeah.
One of the big trends we're seeing is with everybody wanting to spread out, needing more space for breakouts, you know, taking the large groups and trying to figure out how to split them even more. There's also a lot of discussion in the industry about alternative, non-traditional space, being able to meet outside. And so I think that, you know, we don't necessarily have meeting space outside, but we do have some great areas around the American Bank Center where you could do that. So we are exploring a lot of different options internally right now with different things that we can do to continue to entice people to come back. But the most important thing is that people aren't wanting to pile everybody in together. They're needing to be able to social distance, and then looking at having more breakouts that are smaller groups so that they can spread out more.
Do you think this will shrink the market because people are making structural changes, more teleconferencing, or do you expect that market, once we get past the virus and build a Fraser Hotel, that it will continue to maintain?
It's a tough answer to give, mainly because there's conflicting reports around the country. Las Vegas is very bullish, thinking that people are going to continue to come back. It really comes down to what's the kind of community that the event's going to go on. Are they going to be able to put on a good show, and people want to go there as a trip as well? That's one big thing that people are starting to see is you want to go to a conference if there's going to be something additional and fun that you can make an extra trip out of it for personal as well. There is a lot of other people, however, that continue to say that this kind of broke the mold, and people might be more willing to do virtual meetings. I'm guessing, I'm seeing some, what I see is that there might be some combinations of both. There might be options where there's in-person meetings, but they also have a very heavy video set up as well, where there are certain attendees, maybe at a drastically lower rate, could be able to log in as well that aren't able to come.
Thank you, Brett. Thank you, Matt. Keep up the good work. And have your kids learned to play football rather than hockey?
They're still adjusting to, yeah.
Mr. Hernandez?
Yeah, thank you. And actually kind of went along the lines of my question, what Brett was talking about, was our convention center is somewhat limited in its breakout space. And if there was any plans for those to be created or adjusted somehow to being included, because you may have great spaces for like a wedding, but not really for business breakout sessions. So if you can address that.
Yeah, I think from the management of the facility, we're trying to make best with the capital dollars through the HOP fund that we can, which are more smaller scale. I think that's part of a much bigger discussion and getting more folks involved with that, because there's definitely been discussion and, you know, I would say a need to look at and even some ideas that we have for events or for improvements we're holding off because we kind of want to get a total scope of what that means, larger spaces. So there's definitely a need to have those discussions, and I think, you know, getting more people involved on that's probably a good thing too, because funding right now would be the first thing. I mean, there's a lot of ideas that we have, but the ideas are free. It would be how are we going to get the funding, and then kind of go from there, develop that budget and come up with the ideas. So, but it's something that's been talked about for years.
Any other questions? Anybody out in the hinterland? Well, I'll say you.
Mayor, this is
Yeah.
Councilman Roy.
Yeah.
First of all, it was a very good presentation. You know, the COVID, it sure has had some challenges. I wonder, you know, I know in the past, last year, we talked a little bit about some of the performing arts and trying to attract different venues. And I just kind of wondered, number one, are you still looking at trying to seek some of those things off Broadway or Broadway type plays or performances, or, you know, and then my other question was, so I'll ask both of them at the same time. You know, there's a lot of dependency, I would think, in terms of local events. You know, we have graduations there, different school events, job fairs, all those things that you guys have traditionally hosted locally or regionally, what percentage of your business is that?
If I were to answer your second question first, if it would just be a guess right now, but I mean, it's, as far as the local events, I would say 75 to 80% of our events are local, and the rest coming from outside. That would be a best guess right now. We can look back and provide some better data there over the last couple of years if you'd like. But yeah, no, I mean, the community involvement, and that's something that's been a focus of ours over the last couple of years, and kind of tying back to the coastal Christmas and just finding events and new ways to give back to the community, whether volunteering or just events or showing improvements to the facility. And we're talking about a lot of ideas right now from, anyway, I don't want to go too far down the path, but a lot of things just that, with that in mind, is that, you know, such a high percentage of our events and support is local, and continuing to develop that. As far as your first question, yes, and that kind of ties back to the momentum that we were gaining with our, well, I was talking about the arena, you know, it applies on the Saline Auditorium with Broadway shows. That was a priority for me. I brought a relationship with me with another promoter from my previous position. That, you know, the intent was to start bringing 3 to 4, possibly 5 Broadway shows a year, and we had Jersey Boys last year, and that was kind of a dip the toe in the water to see how that went, to see how the market responded, with about 4 or 5 other shows that were on hold to, you know, for end of this year, early next year. So we made a lot of good progress, but we just didn't see it as far as the public seeing what the events are. But yeah, there's probably 5 or 6 shows that we're looking at that would fall into that category that we're trying to bring back to the region.
At what point do you think, I know that getting consumer confidence as far as coming back and participating, you know, in those venues or their events, making sure that, you know, they plan in the future, because I think everything's been on hold. But, you know, whatever we can do to help with the consumer confidence part, making sure that people start thinking in the future. I mean, who knows? You know, there's been all kinds of speculation as far as when this thing's going to be over and what truly the word over means. But, you know, I think we have to work as a community as a whole together to try and promote some of the major venues, you know, like the Bank Center.
I agree 100%. You hit the nail on the head. I mean, there's several different scenarios as far as when it all starts coming back, and one is, like you just said, the confidence of coming to a venue from a safety and health standpoint. One thing I didn't mention I wanted to during the presentation is ASM Global, our corporate office, has put a lot of time and effort into safety protocols, and in a it's called Venue Shield, and to answer your question, as far as we're going to roll that out as we bring more events back, and, you know, do a press release and try to get the news involved to explain everything that we're doing from a safety standpoint, and putting the patrons and the clients and the performers, all of that. That's always, as much as we want to do events, it's making sure we do it safely and building that confidence. So we'll be rolling that out from a public standpoint probably next month, and to your point, to build that confidence that people can come out and have a good experience, but also a safe experience.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, well, we wish this COVID was over at 2:15 and you get to booking and
I
have
wish.
full booking for the next year, but
Thank you.
keep the faith. Mr. Zanoni, does
Yes,
that?
no, we have a few more here. We're going to do Convention and Visitors Bureau, Brett Oding,
Oh, yeah. we
CVB
need-
Director.
Yes, sir.
And he'll also talk to us about the hut tax, and then we'll conclude with Eddie. He's going to do a quick recap on some of the potential amendments to the budget.
Good afternoon, everybody. Go to the next slide here. We'll just give a quick recap of how the hot tax comes in. It's on any sales over $15, there's a 15% hot fee, and that is split up 2 ways. It's 9% for the city. 7 of that goes to Visit Corpus Christi, attractions, the beach, and then the other 2% goes to funding the convention center. And then there's an additional 6% that goes to the state, of which 2% goes to coastal communities. One big point of reference this year is on October 15th last year, the city signed a contract with HomeAway, Airbnb, and VRBO to start collecting hot tax on short-term rentals. And about a month ago, in a meeting with Heather Holbert, she said that they've raised over $500,000 in tax revenues so far from short-term rentals. So that's a brand new revenue stream coming into the city, which is definitely a positive, and that's something that we'll continue to work upon and ensure that everybody's paying that from a short-term rental standpoint. Next slide, please. I've spent a lot of time in the last 5 months since I've been here working with Eddie and Camille on the HOT budget and really looking at forecasting and looking at prior years. And the total revenue expected next year will be $19.5 million, which is fairly flat to last year. It'll be an increase for this year, obviously with COVID, but it'll be flat for last year. And that to me is a pretty conservative estimate as well. We've already seen, even with the losses of the American Bank Center, we are seeing increases in leisure travel in early January, as we all know. And last week, hotel revenues were up 1% versus the same time last year. So there is an increase there. And then in addition, that short-term rental revenue is coming in, which is something that hadn't happened before. So from a HOT collection standpoint, feeling pretty good about what the future holds. Next slide, please. This slide here is an example of the 4 main pools of where the HOT tax goes. As you can see, most of that goes to the convention center for funding and debt service, but then there is $5.7 million for lifeguards, maintenance, safety, and beach nourishment. Visit Corpus Christi receives $5.3 for operating for promotion of the city, and then $1.4 for arts and culture services through different organizations in the city, primarily attractions. Next slide, please. This slide actually says about Visit Corpus Christi, but it's not really about Corpus Christi. Visit Corpus Christi is as much about tourists to the city. And these are three real big takeaways that I would like everybody to really focus in on and look at. 17,000 visitors or 17,000 employees in Corpus Christi work in the tourism and hospitality industry. Last year, almost 10.5 million visitors visited Corpus Christi, and they spend an average of $115.50 per person per day while they're here. That equals 26% of all City of Corpus Christi sales tax revenue collections. And we've seen that a little bit this year with COVID. You're able to see when there's a real drastic jump one way or the other, how it actually affects sales tax collections as well. Obviously we're here talking about HOT collections, but visitors, when they're eating in restaurants, spending retail, going to attractions, they're spending sales tax. They're not spending HOT. Next slide, please. It's been a tough year, obviously, with COVID, but we have had a couple of accomplishments that we wanted to highlight. The first two are two that I'll talk about here in a second, which is an organizational restructuring and new organizational performance metrics. The bottom two are two very exciting ones. Erica Bachta, our Executive Vice President, Chief Sales Officer, had been working for a very long time prior to even me being here. And back in May, we retained the Skills USA annual conference. That's one of the largest conferences in the state of Texas. It was a pretty contested fight between a couple very large cities, cities larger than Corpus Christi. They've been here for many years, as you all know. And back at the end of May, they announced that they signed a new 3-year contract with us. So that event's going to stay here in Corpus Christi, which is great news. The third, or the last one, the Texas Society of Association Executives Annual Conference. This is potentially the biggest thing that we will do next year in terms of an event. This event is only 600 people, but these are 600 CEOs and executive directors of every single state association conference in the state of Texas. So those 600 individuals are really accounting for well over 10 to 15,000 individuals as a part of their conferences. And so we have a really great opportunity to wow them while they're here. And that's something we've already started a committee with our staff, and that staff committee is going to start to branch out into attractions and getting Matt involved as well, as we look to see how do we really wow this group, because we want them to leave. We want each individual to leave knowing that they can bring their conference to Corpus Christi as well. So this is an event that can have very long-standing implications. Next slide, please. This slide is new as of this morning. We had our August Board of Directors meeting this morning, and these were approved by our board. These are our brand new metrics, and these are something that we will give you in a lot more detail as a city council here in the coming couple weeks. When I started, I saw two big issues with our performance metrics. One was that we had two different sets. We had a set of performance metrics for our board of directors, and then we had another different set for the city council. And then if you looked at both of them, they didn't make sense in terms of how they did not necessarily hold our feet to the fire. That's probably something that most people would not say, but I feel differently. I like us to be held accountable for the work that we do, and it was very important to me that we were being graded on things that we can affect and we should affect. And so these are mostly best practices in the tourism industry that have been customized for Visit Corpus Christi. And you see the baseline of what our target is. These were very well thought out, and this is something that will get you in the future when we submit our new contract. Next slide, please. This is our executive board going into next year. Dan Suckley, Vice President of American Bank; Johnny Filippello, President and CEO of Buccaneer Commission; Fred Soward, owner of Docks Seafood; Kendra Kinnison is the general manager of Port Royal Conference Center out on the island. Everybody knows Ed Cantu. I don't know if I even need to explain who he is, but insurance. And then, of course, Peter will be the 6 people on our executive board moving forward for next year. Next slide, please. This slide's a little bit hard to read, but you have it in front of you. This is all of our board members. The highlight that I want to point out, there's 3 different highlights here, and the board of directors voted to approve 3 new changes that will also be recommended to the city council. The first one is Wes Weigel, general manager of Whataburger Field. He was in as a regular voting member that could term out after a certain period of time. We all felt that it was important to have Whataburger Field represented all the time on the board. So a Whataburger Field general manager ex officio position was created. So whether it's Wes or somebody else, there'll always be somebody from Whataburger Field represented on the board. And then if you look down towards the bottom, Representative Todd Hunter has had representation on the board, and it was important to me that we have both of our state representatives. So I reached out to Representative Herrero. He's very excited to be joining the board, and he'll be joining the board on October 1st when the new year takes into place. And then the last one would be for us to be really effective in tourism, we have to have buy-in from the university, and we have to be able to work hand in hand with the university. And having the athletic director is something that was important to me. So John Palumbo is the athletic director at the university. He's going to be joining the board in an ex officio position. And that is a very strategic move as we look to start to capitalize on sports in the community and how we advertise youth sports all the way to water sports as well. Next slide, please. This slide here is a pie chart of the Visit Corpus Christi budget and how it's split out into 4 distinct sections. You see here the biggest takeaway is 55% of our entire budget will be used for marketing and 22% will be used for sales. The difference there is that all sales marketing related advertising is actually under marketing because that's a true marketing function. The 22% for sales is strictly travel and sales related activities that our sales staff will be doing to try to court new business to the community. So we really put a big emphasis this year into sales and marketing as opposed to other areas. Next slide, please. This is our organizational chart. Currently we have 14 employees. When I started we had 20. And so we just hired our 14th person just this week. He just started. He's a multimedia specialist. He's going to be doing a lot of video for us. You can see here the 4 green boxes are how we have our organization split up into 4 different departments: sales, experience, creative strategy, which is traditional marketing, and then operations. The one that I want to point out here is experience. This is a brand new department, and this is something that is not necessarily a brand standard in the industry, but it's something that in a heavy tourism environment like Corpus Christi, it was important. Meredith Darden, some of you might know her, she's our VP of experience, and her job really is tasked with ensuring that we look at every single inch of this city and every person in this city that could come into contact with a visitor, whether it's a sales conference attendee or a leisure traveler, and look at ways that we can make that experience better so that when they leave, they have a favorable opinion and they want to come back. And not only they come back, but we want them to tell their friends and their family to come with them next time. Next slide, please. We have a lot of strategies for next year. I couldn't fit them all on one paper, so I decided I would just point out the real big ones. We are about halfway through the process right now of gaining international accreditation through the Destinations International Organization for us to be an accredited destination management organization. Within the next month, we will be going through an all-staff and board workshop where we will create new mission and vision statement. We are in the final stages of hiring a new advertising agency that will work with us to create a new brand and visitor study so we can ensure that we are advertising to the right people and to the right locations. That will also then turn into a 3-year strategic plan that's essentially a business plan with sales and marketing strategies connected to it. Next year will also be a 8-month process where we develop a 10-year destination management strategy that will be comprised of multiple charrettes, focus groups, workshops, and one-on-ones with a consultant that we are going to hire that will be reaching out to every one of you as well as key community influencers, stakeholders, and the hospitality industry. And what we're trying to get out of that is the main point there is a destination development strategy. So what needs built, what are our weaknesses in Corpus Christi, and how do we make it a better environment for tourism? Short-term rental strategy. I talked about HOT being collected now. From our opinion, what's going on the island from a short-term rental standpoint is just as important as what's going on in the hotels and anywhere else in the community. And that is a very huge asset for us. And so we are moving forward treating short-term rentals and the island equally as everybody else. And so what that means is we've done a really good job working with hotels and working with downtown to create strategies on how to get people down. We are creating a marketing strategy for short-term rentals in the island as well to capitalize on that. And that is even more important now with COVID. The short-term rental industry has really increased where a lot more people feel safer staying in their own home or their own townhouse, for instance, than a hotel oftentimes. So we want to make sure we capitalize on that because there's obviously a lot of competition between Galveston and South Padre just in Texas. That's not even including all the Gulf Coast beaches on the other side of New Orleans and Florida. We are in the early stages of creating a sports commission, which is something that I am very excited about. Sports in Corpus Christi, and when I say sports, I mean land and water sports, is probably the biggest untapped potential that we have to bring visitors here. There's virtually no youth sports events, tournaments of fishing that bring people from out of town, surfing, kayaking, yachting, youth basketball, what's going on at the university. There is a great opportunity for us to increase tourism and overnight stays just from focusing on sports. So the Sports Commission is something that we'll be creating, and now we'll have somebody that will be an executive director of the Sports Commission that will work directly for me, and they will be tasked with going out and trying to create relationships to bring those events to town. And then obviously the last one again is the Texas Society of Association Executives. That takes place next April. So we have a few months to plan that out, but we might be asking for some of your help as we get through there again, because again, that's our opportunity that doesn't come around very long, where we're going to have the biggest association executives and decision makers in the entire state of Texas and our city for 4 days. The very last slide, please. While I was talking, my assistant sent a calendar invite to all of you, and have these on your calendar. Obviously, we've talked a lot about the Destination Next assessment that's taking place September 24th. Prior to that, there are 2 town halls where the consultants will be coming in. We've talked to the hospitality industry, the hoteliers, some of the elected officials. It's very important to me that we hear from the general public as well about what their thoughts are on tourism. So we're going to be holding 2 town halls on the 14th and the 15th of September. The first one is going to be at Brewster Street Ice House in their outdoor area, so we'll be able to safely social distance. It'll be 90 minutes. And then the second one is going to be a virtual town hall via Zoom. And there is emails going out. We're going to have some social media posts, and the Zoom link will also be on our website as we get closer to that date. So all very important for the public to know, and then if obviously any of you as well as public as well, if you have any thoughts for us, the consultants and myself will be leading those 2 town halls, and we would love to hear your feedback. That concludes my presentation. Be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Hernandez.
Apologies, that was from the last.
Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I'm a quick learner sometimes.
Yeah. Well, it's great news to hear we're up in August on there. When you first said comparable revenues to last year, I was kind of going, oh, that's a stretch, but the fact that we're up in August, even though it's marginal, is great. This may be a question for Eddie, I don't know, but when we did the convention center on there, we had $3.3 million of hot tax revenue going to it, and on your slide, you had $7.1 million in convention expense. So I'm wondering where that $3.8 million gap is. I'm finished with you, Brett.
The 7.1 million includes capital and includes also the insurance the city pays for the convention center area and the IT support.
Okay,
and in addition, the ASM Global fees and the potential incentive they might earn.
So the budget that Matt presented us, and we've got some expenses outside of that budget?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Eddie.
Yes, sir.
And just one quick thing, being on council for 4 years, and we saw this trio coming up, and I can't tell you as a 5th generation Corpus Christian how exciting it is to see the new vim and vigor that we've got going on this city, that we're making these changes, stuff that we haven't seen for decades, right? Whether it was the airport or ABC, and now, Brett, I think we're just putting together our 21st century team to really take Corpus Christi forward. And all 3 groups, y'all did great presentations, and I wish we didn't have the virus, but in 2021 we'll be behind it. Keep up the great work, and for me, with my kids and my grandkids now, knowing that we've got leadership like this, I think we have nothing but great places to go. So,
Appreciate
thanks.
that. Appreciate that. Yeah. Don't forget the guy behind me, too.
Mr. Garza?
I didn't push a button, but I did have a question real quick.
Okay. All right, that's Ben then today.
Go ahead, Ben, you go first.
I appreciate it. We're playing musical chairs here, it seems like. I just want to take a moment to commend the leadership of all 3 organizations that we heard from today. This has been one of the most, if not the most challenging time in the history of our city. And you guys have really felt that effect. And for you guys to be able to continue to keep working hard and make improvements and changes where you see the need to really speaks to your leadership. So I want to commend you guys for not being discouraged, but accepting this as a challenge, and you're moving the ball forward. So I appreciate you all.
Thank you.
Mr. Carter?
Yeah, I too want to commend y'all's efforts in your presentations. I think they were very good and they were positive despite the challenges that we're in. The short-term rental revenues excellent. I guess that should help us maybe be able to backfill some of the shortfalls.
Absolutely. It was a very serendipitous time to start that. It's definitely helped us hedge with a whole new revenue stream. It's helped with the decreases in what the hotels are getting right now. So it's going to help us moving forward, where we have not necessarily, as a city, taken a hit as much as other cities have. There are still 5 months in, there are still major metros in the United States that have major hotels closing. Organizations such as Visit Corpus Christi still laying off and furloughing employees as things aren't getting better. Convention centers still closing down. So we've been very fortunate here for sure.
Going forward, I still believe we probably at some point need to address short-term rentals. I am concerned that short-term rentals or Airbnbs cannot be utilized in certain zoning, even residential zoning districts, because it creates a congestion for trying to deliver or pick up delivery services or solid waste services in some of those neighborhoods if the street parking is overutilized versus other areas where you have medium or light density residential. And so I think that's still something that I think we need to address, because even if we get revenues on this side, if our solid waste trucks have to go back twice in order to pick up areas that are being impacted by short-term rentals, they could be, negative.
I completely agree, and I will give a plug to some of the city staff. Miles behind me, I've had a couple talks with him. He's really on top of it, as well as Dan McGinn, looking at from a planner standpoint. And ISAC has recently, last month, created a short-term rental subcommittee to take a look at the short-term rental market, looking at different cities and what's going on around the country to ensure that we have the best plan moving forward.
Perfect, great, thank you.
Just a couple of comments. One, on the short-term rental, I think everybody is in agreement. They make a tremendous contribution to the visitor business, but at the same time, I think this is what the staff is wrestling on in terms of our zoning and proper and legal in certain areas. I don't think we ought to do it to the detriment of, single-family residential neighborhoods where that's what they were designed for, and they need to be maintained. So I don't know where we are on that and trying to come up with a definition or some types of rules that could really both accommodate the short-term rental basis. I think on the island, they've got several areas that might be some designated territories that they're acceptable in, and we've got some provisions within our existing ordinance, but any clarifications so that, we eliminate the conflicts that do come up from time to time. But I think they're a great asset, and we just got to make sure that we've got them registered, and we can, in case we get complaints. I mean, I got probably more phone calls at the beginning of COVID when they'd closed the beaches to vehicular traffic, and it created some concern. I mean, I got one call from, I think it was up around the Chicago area. I think I kicked it over to you to try to help us, but a lot of confusion on people that are coming in. They call the mayor here, and then they find out that the unit they're renting is in Port Aransas, and so we try to help them, accommodate them. But the difficulty they were having with that one and others that I'd sent to you in trying to come with some resolution. This doesn't happen often, but we need to somehow, in our whole scheme of things, somehow put this in the provision, is that when there is a cancellation due to local decisions, I mean, that family in Chicago, I think there was 4 of them coming down their week. It took me by the surprise, and they told me their week down here was $10,000 for the unit they'd rented for 4 people, for 4 families. And, the cancellation time had lapsed. So, I mean, they were out whatever their deposit was on a $10,000 week. And so just kind of, I mean, if we want to have a good, I've been there, I love it, I want to go back, as opposed to I went down there, I got shafted, I'm never going back experience, I think we're really gonna have to work with these people to make sure there's some way to accommodate, whether it be a pandemic or whether it be a hurricane or whatever would cause some interruption that was unanticipated. I know they got what they call this force majeure or whatever, but that's a whole different deal. There just ought to be some common sense, general business courtesy that if it's a problem, we'll work with you. And they may have all worked it out. I don't know how the end came out, but then on the other, it's, I understand the governor's office had been in touch with you and the city manager about what accommodations, if any, to try to help some people getting out of Louisiana and East Texas as a result of the hurricane. Were we able to help with that information, or do we have some people here now as a result of the evacuations? And what can we do to help, if anything, on that?
So, yeah, what essentially happened from our understanding is the city of Houston was reaching out, their emergency management reached out to the state, asking if they could find out where available rooms were, because people from Houston, Galveston were inundating them with questions, where could we go? So they called Waco, Austin, San Antonio, Corpus Christi to try to get a count of available rooms. So we got that to them. We also had a list of which hotels were available. So we had our sales staff make some quick calls and find out how many rooms were available at different hotels in the city. And we didn't get a whole bunch, I think probably because it was just really one day, but we did get an uptick in rooms last night because of that, and Wednesday night as well, or Tuesday night and Wednesday night as well.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we could help and we're available. I mean, it's kind of like when you're out on a boat. If your boat goes down, you know, the guy that's got a good one ought to stop and help, because next time it's going to be his boat and he's going to need some help. So we really need to help these people. So I'm glad to hear that. Thank you. Any other comments? All right.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, one final presentation from Eddie, and that'll wrap it up for today.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Eddie Houlihan with the Office of Management and Budget. I'm going to wrap up this phase of the budget process here. Next slide, please. As you're well aware, we've had 4 council workshops every Thursday in August, this being the last, with the various topics listed. Next slide, please. We've also had 5 budget input sessions. Last year we were able to go out to the different districts and to the libraries and other locations. This year they were all virtual. We did have great participation though. Over almost 1,200 viewers on Facebook Live and YouTube for the 5 virtual public input sessions. We are very appreciative of citizens taking their time, because it does help us gauge the needs in these different districts. Next slide, please. Just a couple of slides on some of the comments that we heard in each district. District 1 occurred on the 10th of August, and there were some comments on libraries, city parks, amenities, including shade structures, street and sidewalk improvements, and a couple of comments on the need for some welcoming signs for drivers entering our city. Next slide, please. District 2. Also heard some public library comments, some comments on pedestrian safety and additional lighting that's needed, some comments on the new water towers, the need to bring the funding to bring those online, and some comments on the replacement of Cole Park Pier. Next slide, please. In District 3, a couple of comments on code enforcement, some comments on how parks are chosen for repairs and upgrades, the comments on the need for improving the city's Wi-Fi network, and also the comments on more community walk and bike trails and community tracks, the need for those. In District 4, next slide, please. We, again, some comments on libraries, comments on the quality and improving the life expectancy of our streets, some comments on improvements to the wastewater treatment plant, the need for more solid waste cleanup events in that area, and also, again, some comments on city park amenities, including shade structures. In 5, some comments about the street repairs in the Lake subdivision, on some comments on how the street department budget is managed and how residents can get what they need to do to get their streets looked at. Some measures needed to mitigate or eliminate the street racing that was going on in that area. Additional lighting needed in Bill Witt Park, and some comments on increased funding for the library checkout program. Kind of a summarization of all these input sessions. Again, there were almost 1,200 viewers on Facebook Live and YouTube. There were 110 questions asked at these 5 public input sessions. And as last year, we had a positive response on this type of engagement. And the comments were focused on mostly parks, libraries, streets, and utilities. As a result of these 5 input sessions, you may recall last year, as a result of the input sessions, we did add a code enforcement and some library hours. And this year, we did have a whole lot of comments on libraries and the park shade structures and amenities at parks. And even though it was a difficult year, we felt that the need was that we should at least go and try to address some of the concerns that we heard over and over again. So the city manager is recommending that we do include in the budget $35,000 for additional digital resources at libraries. There were some comments that even the library director made during her presentation that some of the platforms that they have only allow a certain number, especially of the popular resources that they have, only allow 3 or 4 subscriptions. If somebody has those 3 or 4 subscriptions, you have to get on a waiting list and wait until somebody turns it in. So this would help alleviate some of that. And then in addition, adding a shade structure out at South Bay Park, $75,000 for that particular item. That was next up on the park list. These 2 additions are to be funded with the final numbers for the appraisal district came in a little bit less than what we had budgeted, so we would get $70,000 from that budget. And July sales tax was considerably up, as Brett mentioned, and so we feel comfortable that increasing that by $40,000 is a reasonable thing to do in the revenue area to fund these two additional recommended additions. Next slide. Some of the staff amendments to the budget that we're recommending, most of these on this page we discussed very briefly last time. I'll go over them. In the water fund, due to the delay of the stormwater fee, and remember at that time the plan was to implement a stormwater fee in mid-year or April 1, and it would also at that time reduce the water rates to offset that. So this is not going to be done, so we increased the water revenue in the budget, and then we also, in order to fund the stormwater area, increased the transfer to the stormwater fund, as it's been done in the past. So the stormwater operation will be funded with water rates and do a transfer. In the stormwater fund, we eliminate the fee that we had in there for six months, and we also increase on the other side, we increased the transfer, the revenue, the transfer from the water fund. The next item was added in air and wastewater. We added a new organization, and erroneously some of that was put into the stormwater fund, so we have to zero that out and add it down in the wastewater fund where it should have been included. And then also in the wastewater fund and several other items below, you'll see that there was some debt restructuring and refunding and some additional bonds sold in the late July, and when we got the final numbers in, we had to make a few adjustments. So the decreasing the transfer to the wastewater system debt fund from the wastewater fund. Then I'll go to those 3 at the bottom is all related. In the water system, we increased the debt expenditures. There was a substantial fund balance in there of over $4 million, so we used the fund balance to pay for the debt in 2021. And then in the wastewater debt, we decreased the revenues coming from the wastewater, and also decreased the debt expenditures. And then in the stormwater, increased the debt expenditures. And up in the middle of the page there,
In the engineering fund, there was a double up in some salary and wage items that we took out, and then they get their revenue from bond funds based on their expenditures, so we reduced the revenues that would be coming from the bond funds. Next slide is something that an amendment that you have not seen before, and then in discussions in August with the Development Services staff and in discussions on the building, the Frost Bank building over there, we came up with, and also some issues that they had with enforcing their code compliance with city codes. So the recommended additions here are 2 additional positions in related equipment to help enforce code compliance with city codes, amounting to about $250,000, and that includes a couple of vehicles. The next is to do some remodeling over there at the old Frost Bank. Some interior building remodels, some external signage, some parking lot improvements, some HVAC upgrades, and audio visual equipment, and also some furniture. That amounts to $2 million. And we did have the next item is a master plan and impact fee. We did have some money, some funding in that, but we need an additional $700,000 to make sure we're able to cover the master plan and the impact fee. The funding for these 3 items totaling $2,950,000 would come from their fund balance, which they have a fund balance estimated at the end of 21 of about $3.9 million. All right, I believe that's all I have for you today. I'll stand by for any questions that you might have.
Mr. Hernandez.
Yeah, Eddie, going to the stormwater, and I'm assuming we're going off the one that you had sent us as an addendum previously.
Yes.
There was you said you're going to increase the amount of debt that's being transferred from them. Is that correct? Did I mishear that or didn't see that correctly?
Let's see, in the stormwater debt.
Because in the past, there was funding associated with it that was transferred to utility system debt fund, and last year was in the amount of $14,262,760, and then there's none in the proposed budget.
We did move the debt in the stormwater to the water fund because the stormwater debt is funded with water revenue.
Okay, but was that the amount that was specifically for stormwater projects, or did we clarify that this was the correct amount, that $14 million?
No, we did have to, the 14.6 was originally budgeted. We did have to increase because of a bond sale in late July. And so and that was another fund that had the debt service fund had a substantial fund balance. So we took the money out of the stormwater debt fund. Are you looking at the schedule of okay. Yeah. Maybe I'm not.
You know what? This probably is going to be a bit more complicated than to describe it here. Why don't I get with you afterwards so I can get a full picture on that?
Yeah, we can go through that.
Okay. I just, there's just a little concerning as how much is being spent here, and I just want to make sure it is all out of stormwater. Stormwater is, if we're looking at this correctly, we're only going to be spending $16 million in stormwater, and it's very low.
Not including the debt.
Not including the debt.
Part of that.
Not including the debt. That's what I'm saying. It's just a very low amount for the amount of items that are associated with it, and I just want to make sure that we're not shortchanging them, considering all the work that needs to be done.
Yeah, Councilman, that is the budget, but it is increased a little bit over the prior year. So we're doing more street sweeping and more vegetation control, and we'll go over that.
Yeah, it's just a little hard to tell from the way this is set up.
We'll show it to you. Make
Okay,
sure
and so I'd like to go through that in detail. Also, there are some items that were not covered in any of these budget workshops, specifically the internal services funds. There's a couple of areas I'd like to go through with you. I'd probably get with you on separately on that, as well as the community enrichment funds. I have a lot of questions around there, so I will get with you on that.
Okay, sure.
Thank you.
Mr. Roy? Or is that, you're Mr. Roy,
I
okay.
think I'm Mr. Roy today. Okay. Thank you, Mayor. Overall, I just want to say thank you very much to staff, Eddie particularly, Mr. Zanoni, work you did on the budget. I think it's a good budget. I think it's going to be a good year next year. A couple of areas I just have some questions about. There were some issues or some questions that came up related to possibly trying to get more events scheduled by solid waste services to clean up certain areas. I know that it's always a challenge to try to clean up areas around the bluff, and then that's certainly true over here on the west side. I think all of us got an email requesting help with an area around Agnes in Virginia. A lady, I guess her and her husband bought several lots, and they were trying to clean that up, and they were already into their pockets quite a bit, cleaning that area up in some lots that they bought. They inherited all this debris. As we go through trying to improve neighborhoods, blighted neighborhoods, I think that if we could offer some assistance when it's requested or when they take the initiative to clean it, I think it'd be great. David said that there were some areas where he thought that his cost savings were on the conservative side and his revenue projections were on the conservative side. If we see some areas that we might be able to expend some dollars on to be able to help those efforts in older areas, that would be great. That would be beneficial because some of these folks don't have the sophistication in order to be able to ask for dollars through the DMD or through other resources, CBDG funds, in order to be able to accomplish some of the things they're trying to do.
Yeah, we can do that, no problem, Councilman.
Okay, then the other issue, in development services, I know that Frost building, at some point, we were going to quit paying rent and we were going to take ownership
Yes, sir.
of that building. So the question that I had is, if we're not going to be paying rent, could some of those dollars be utilized to be able to make some of the improvements they need to make?
Yes, yeah, we had a comprehensive meeting to determine all the key facts in that, and in fact, we're going to have an executive session with the city council soon, I think in September or October.
Okay.
Because the building, for $0 we can buy, and so the council has to make that decision. It's a real estate transaction, even though the price is $0.
Right.
So we'll bring you a full executive session. We already sent a letter to Frost Bank expressing interest in buying it.
Right,
We had to do that, and there's certain trigger dates, I think it's July 1 or July 31. The building can revert to us if we want to buy it.
Okay.
And we have that information to bring to you. The budget, you notice there, Al Raymond has a proposal to use development services funds to improve at least the lobby or the first floor where the development community uses. We're supportive of that, and it's using fund balance, and so that was part of the amendments that Eddie went through.
Okay, great.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Smith.
Thank you. I'd just like to follow up with Councilman Garza's talks about the litter critter, lack of a better word. These programs on both the island and Flower Bluff have been a great success. And what do? They clean up the community. And a lot of times this is litter you'd find on the side of the road if we didn't have the community resources or help picking it up. And I know out there it's been some great programs, and to your point, it shouldn't be out in Flower Bluff and Padre Island. It should be all throughout the city. The money that we spend on doing that, we save by picking up those mattresses and tires and other kind of debris off the side of the roads that we have to end up doing it. And particularly in Flower Bluff, that we've got a lot less of that now. And we're running it once every couple of months. It's not like it's a big deal, but it's for the community. It's been a great program. So I second your thoughts on that.
Mr. Molina.
Mayor, this is Councilman Roy.
Oh, okay. I called Roy and Ruby's talking. Now it's Roy Everett.
Yes. First of all, I just want to thank the city staff, the city manager, the process as far as looking back at the meetings, that kicked off with District 1. I know there are a lot of people that were listening because I've actually had people come up and approach me on the street and ask questions about the budget. And I think it tied in well with what we're trying to do on the 624 corridor. And I think these type of events are awesome. And I think that I thought we did a great job last year. I think you guys went above and beyond this year. So again, thank you. I do have one question. I want to make sure you were showing a slide about the additional $700,000, and I believe it was for a study on the master plan.
Yeah, master plan and impact fees.
Yeah, is that correlated? We had a presentation from a group out of San Antonio that were going to help us possibly work on our master plan and the UCC. Is that related to that at all?
Yes, it is, Councilman. So we did, and that'll be coming forward to the council soon. We did a request for proposal and RFP process. And I believe we had 2 or more bidders, and staff has a recommendation on which firm to recommend to help us with that.
So will that
plan.
700,000 be additional to, I think it was 752,000 that we were looking at was the estimate?
It was somewhere in that neighborhood, yes. And this would be, I don't know if it's that plus this, but there's an increase overall based on all the submittals that we got. And I think the scope is also increased as recommended by Al Raymond. And,
okay.
Yes, sir.
That's correct.
Are you on the phone? You there, Al? Yeah, go ahead, Al, and please.
Yes, I am.
Thank you.
Yeah, the 700 grand, I think it was 753 grand, if I'm not mistaken, Councilman, was just for the consultant then, which was out of San Antonio, was just going to use the master plans that we had and then do an impact fee study from that. It turns out that we didn't have master plans here in Corpus, so we had to put out a request for qualifications and include that as part of the services we need so that we can develop accurate impact. We can develop an accurate impact fee study that'll take us, over the next 10 years. So that's really kind of what was proposed on by just two firms. So as Peter said, we'll be bringing that to council here shortly.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for the clarification. Thank you.
Mr. Raymond?
Welcome, sir.
Mr. Raymond?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Clarify something for me. I have been told over and over that we have shelves and shelves of studies, of master plans and all other kind of plans, and you're saying we don't have a master plan. What don't we have a master plan of?
We have, and not to be that specific because I do not know, but I know we do have a lot of studies, a lot of documents that have studied us, that have studied many parts of the city. We have a lot of area development plans. All are great, and whether it's studies from for water, whether it's studies for wastewater, for our UTP, for our roads, stormwater, as you know. But none of that is comprehensive, right? None of that connects all of the pieces. So we're working with we put out the RFQ so that someone could take what we have so that we don't do the work over again, okay? Because we acknowledge that, hey, this city has spent a lot of money for all these studies that somehow we've sort of put on a shelf. And we're looking at all of that and having the consultant go through all of that so that we don't pay for work twice. But we need that put together in a comprehensive set of master plans that, one, we can use for, future development to see how we want the city to grow, but second, and most importantly, to develop the impact fee studies.
So let me make sure I'm understanding here, because it sounds to me like we got the cart before the horse until we tied them up to the hitching post. I mean, I think staff was just on the verge of bringing us a whole new rate structure and stormwater fees and all this sort of stuff. But we said no, the rumors we were getting was that was a whole lot more than we were going to be ready to deal with before the budget. So we pulled the plug on it till next year to get it done. But how are they going to be prepared to bring us a report and a recommendation and restructuring us of fees if we don't have this master plan?
That is a great question, Mayor, and whether it's the cart before the horse. And we weren't really involved in that, but my comment would have been the money for the stormwater fees goes somewhere, and that money then someone says, oh yeah, this is what you need to do, this is what we need to do. That part just was kind of way out ahead of the plan, right? What is our plan? And I wasn't a part of putting that together, so I don't want to insult any of my, my coworkers or anything. But I would say, if asked, yes, you would have need the plan first before we would have plugged in fees.
Okay, thank you. I'm trying to think who's, I'm looking at a name and I'm trying to think that ain't who's there. Ben.
Quick question. You stated that you've got, let's see, 2 additional code compliance officers built in there. Is that the same as, that's not the same as code enforcement, is it?
No,
Al's
sir,
on,
it's
Al,
not.
Go ahead, Al.
No, sir, it's not. These are compliance inspectors, that look at zoning per se, which code enforcement doesn't necessarily do. And there's a lot of, dare I say, zoning violations, which are just so prevalent here, and it's very difficult for our current inspectors who deal with, the vertical construction to then catch that as well. And I think this is a great way to help us connect all the dots. And it's a proactive group.
Yeah, can I add to that? So these 2, they're not code compliance officers as we know them to be. They won't be responding to things like high weeds or parking on the front lawn or blighted structures. However, they will have an impact on neighborhoods. So it'll be somewhat of an extension or an augmentation or an improvement. And you can count them as 2 more. We added 2 code compliance officers in the budget through CDBG funds. These 2 will be working for Al and will be looking for development type violations. Instances where somebody's doing an addition to their home but they don't have permits, or they're, as Al said, they're not zoned to do a particular development but they're doing it anyway. And so they'll have the authority to cite violations, get them into compliance. But most of these are in our neighborhoods, so it's going to improve neighborhoods still. And I asked in the vetting process, is 2 too many? Can we do 1? And the answer is 2 is not enough, but it's a good start. And so we're recommending that today.
Okay, are these new positions that we created?
Yes, there'll be new positions, yes.
Okay, great, thank you.
If I can add to that, Councilwoman Paulette Lardo.
Yeah.
Peter, I just want to thank you for doing that because I think there's a huge need. And I think it really makes everyone's, I guess it's more efficient and it's going to allow for our current code enforcement officers to focus, on what their true focus should be. So I'm excited about it. I'd like, you don't have to do it now, but I would like to know, I guess, based on best practices in our situation, and again, this could be later, but let us know what is the ideal, what is the goal. And we're hiring 2 today, or we're including 2 in the budget. So what would be the goal moving forward to make that a very solid operation?
Okay, we'll get you that, Councilwoman.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Just one.
Real quick.
Is this from last time? You got another question?
No, I have another question.
All right.
And this is for Al Raymond. Just so I'm clear as to what you're trying to accomplish here with the master plans, I had a long conversation with Larry Urban about the various master plans that we have and how they've been, you create the master plan for stormwater, wastewater, water. Over time, as you develop a certain area, you create the master plan for it. And so you have a series of master plans that are different from each other, kind of overlap. Some of them have gaps in them. So is it your intent with this to create a unified master plan for the entire city that's available in an electronic version so it's easier to access with your system? Can you kind of get your ultimate goal there, what you're trying to accomplish?
Well, thank you, Councilman. The goal is to create an overall master plan for our water system, for our wastewater system, for our roads, and for our stormwater system, right? So that now when we come to council and we say, oh, someone wants to amend the master plan to make something happen, that won't be the case anymore, because if anyone goes off the plan, then they're funding that themselves. Impact fees will pay for the master plan that is approved and adopted by city council. If anyone goes off the rails and say, I want to do something, off the beaten path, God bless them, they can do that, but it's going to be at their own expense to connect to our overall system. You understand? So in essence, the master plans, which is a public process, which everyone will participate in, will be the guide that we use over the next several years.
Okay, so your goal is to unify them all to where you don't have variations between the master plans in different areas, and it'll be consolidated.
That's correct.
Okay, that's you're going to make a lot of engineers very happy. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, one last question. I don't. Did you have another question? Okay. Mr. Roy, then, did you have another? Here's when you're drawing down these fund balances and doing some other things in these different accounts, and since you're the kind of the guru from A to Z on the budget, we have been able to maintain our goal of a 20 or 25% fund balance or reserve fund in these accounts?
Yes, sir. Most of the fund balance drawdowns that occurred were in special revenue funds, where the funds are only available for specific purposes, and internal service, where we were a little over the 5% that is the policy in those particular funds. So we did use a little bit of fund balance. We would either use a little fund balance or rebate it back to the other city departments that paid in.
Yeah, Mayor, can I add to that? So in any case where we used fund balance, and there's been a few, we were still maintaining the council-approved fund balance goal. The first thing we did in the budget is approve the council's financial policies. That set goals for reserves in each of the funds.
Right.
None of those are being violated. We're either at or even in excess of that goal amount. And so the use of the fund balance is beyond that goal amount. It's right. And remember, our financial credibility, or our financial evaluation, our credit rating has been improved 3 times in the past 15 months. The first time was about a year ago, and then most recently it was upgraded again by 2 of the rating agencies. So we've had 3 financial upgrades, which is great, because that means we spend less on interest and more on infrastructure. And we're mindful of that, and we're being advised by our financial advisor to make sure we don't deteriorate any of that assessment from the financial agencies, the credit agencies. So we're very mindful of that. Mm-hmm.
And coming up to I guess the 11th month of our fiscal year, starting Saturday or Sunday, whenever the first is, I don't remember what the date is. Does it look like we're going to be able to have the information available to get our submissions in, to get some of our reimbursements in this fiscal year from their COVID expenditures, to try to minimize the impact on it for this fiscal year?
Well, we've already received I believe it's $3.5 million, but I don't know if Constance has some information.
We got the initial shot.
Right.
And then it's all got to be turned in on or before December the 1st,
correct.
I think.
31st, I think it is. End of December, right? 30th?
But, if I know I've got $3 million sitting here, why do I want to wait until October to submit it if I know I can justify those expenses now, because it's a reimbursement?
No, we're doing that. Yes, sir.
We are doing that.
Absolutely, yes.
What I guess I'm trying to do is recapture some money within this fiscal year's budget.
Absolutely.
So that we don't show that we came in with a shortage versus coming in.
That's right. Even when we do get the grant funds.
On budget, under budget, in time, or whatever, how they want to phrase it.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor. So What accounting will be doing is journalizing the expenditures incurred in our operating budget and moving that to the grant fund. And it's that fund that we will be requesting the reimbursement for. So our operating funds should be made whole this fiscal year as well as next fiscal year. And we are applying for those reimbursements.
Good. Thank you. I mean, I knew we were in good financial condition, or we wouldn't be able to be getting the bond rating increases, but
Yes.
it's that cash flow that
No,
that eats you
absolutely.
alive if you're not careful.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, actually, our sales tax for, that we got in August, which we post in July is for June sales, actually came in better than what actually came in fiscal year 19, so it was amazing to me, really, that we're able to continue, but we're doing very well, actually. Now, July might be a little, because that's when we had the second dip a little bit, but June was very, very good.
Sometimes better to be lucky than smart, I guess.
I've got one last comment for Peter.
Okay.
Peter, can we stay diligent in regards to the need that there's going to be in Louisiana because of the hurricane? Like, do we have anything that, if they're in need of water or whatever, that we can send them? I think it's just something that we should tentatively plan on.
Yes, Councilwoman.
good neighbor.
Yeah, right now we have 5 firefighters out there that we dispatched earlier in the week at a state request. Billy Delgado, who we've been here pretty much all day, so I haven't had a chance to check in with him, but he yesterday, actually the day before, began conversations with the Red Cross and looking at those entities that control the FEMA domes. So we have potential shelters if we need them. That's already underway. This thing's, the little bit of TV I got to see this morning includes a lot of brush that's down. We're still picking up our brush from Hannah. But we know how it is to get help, and we're a leader in the region, so we know how to help people. So over the next, today and tomorrow, we'll assess how can we help those communities from the impacts.
Good.
Yes, ma'am.
And I think it'd be nice if you could reach out and just let them know we're here. I think that would mean a whole lot to them, just to actually hear from us.
Okay, we'll do that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, don't see any other questions. You got anything you want to wrap it up?
No, I just wanted, the next process and the next steps in the budget process is September the 8th, we have the first reading of the budget, and the 15th, we have the adoption of the budget.
Right.
We appreciate the council and everything all the attendance we got at the budget input sessions, and we appreciate that.
Yeah, just a quick recap on the council schedule. So we have no meeting next week. It's the first of the month, September 1st. We'll be back on September 8th, as Eddie just said, for the first read on the budget, and then a regular city council meeting on the 8th of September, and then the adoption's on the 15th.
All right. Anybody got anything else good for the sake of the organization? If not, this meeting's adjourned.